I'm United States Senator Cynthia Lummis, and this is The Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
I'm your co-host, Sophie Delkay.
And our guest today was the wonderful senator from the state of Wyoming, Cynthia Lummis. So nice, so fun, right, Sophie?
So much fun. We have two wonderful senators from Wyoming, though.
Yes, our chairman, Senator John Barrasso, and I believe they are good friends.
Some say.
Some say.
No, they have a great relationship. They do Teletown Hall together, too.
Yeah, you see them talking together, and you can tell it's just two wonderful people right there.
Yeah.
Okay, enough brown-nosing. Let's get on to the podcast. Here's United States
It wasn't
Senator
brown-nosing.
Cynthia Lummis.
Come on, it was authentic.
It is true.
Yeah.
Senator Cynthia Lummis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is fun. I get to be on The Elephant in the Room.
Well, we would like to clear something up right away. Are you glad hummus exists simply to help people pronounce your name?
Yes, absolutely. People want to say Lummis for some reason.
All the time,
yeah,
right,
even
Sophie?
even though it's a double M in the middle, which should clue people in that
Yeah.
it would be Lummis. For some reason, they default to Lummis, and so Lummis rhymes with hummus is just easy. So yes, I am glad that there's hummus. In fact, one of my committee chairs couldn't get it right, and so I kept taking her little containers of hummus to help remind her gently that
That's hilarious.
Pay the price. Do you even enjoy hummus? I think this is the question on our listeners' minds.
okay, definitely if it's got some spice to it.
Okay.
Yeah, just plain old hummus, not so much.
All right.
But if there's a little bit of
Garlic.
or chili
Yeah.
spices, yeah.
Is that your preferred type of food? You like spicier food?
Well, not the kind that makes your forehead
just
sweat.
sweating
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah,
Okay.
but, I like.
I like spicy.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Well, let's clear something up secondarily here, and we're going to go way, way back, and either Sophie or I will be very surprised. The bio we have for you says, born on a cattle ranch in Laramie County. Were you literally born on the cattle ranch?
Oh no, I was actually born in the hospital in
Okay.
Cheyenne.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
My-
Well, I was going to be surprised. I mean, I don't know anyone who's
She
been
said
born
no.
on a cattle ranch.
Senator Lummis was definitely born on the ranch for this.
Well, I my last two grandsons were born on the bathroom floor at home.
I love it.
And I got to be there for the last one.
Was
Oh my
that
God,
planned?
fun.
No,
Okay.
unplanned.
Unplanned bathroom floor. break.
Yeah, so I know it can happen.
Wow.
It happened to my daughter.
Well, can you tell us
She
the
got
story
along
behind
great.
us?
Well, sure. I have three grandsons.
Okay.
And last February, I got to go to Austin to visit. And while I was there, my son-in-law came rushing in the middle of the night and said, the baby's coming. And honestly, 20 minutes later,
Oh, my God.
that baby was born, and he was almost 10 pounds.
Wow.
And born at home, just on the bathroom floor. And my daughter's a trooper, and she got along great and
Oh my
amazing.
gosh.
Yeah, it was really fun to be there.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was fun.
That is very fun.
Yeah.
I would like to do an at-home birth when I'm ready to have kids, but I can't really imagine not making the choice and it just happening.
Yeah, so these were unplanned. His older brother was also born at home. They were planning on a midwife, but the midwife didn't show up.
Oh my
So
gosh.
my daughter was saying to her husband, who was looking up on Google how to deliver a baby, and she said to him, the baby's coming now. And he said, and I looked down and there was a little face staring up at me. Isn't that wild?
That's incredible.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really fun.
is fun.
I'm delighted to be the grandmother of three grandsons.
Well,
ages
selfish question about that
5,
because
3, and 10 months.
I didn't understand what it was like to be a parent in the first place. How does it feel being a grandparent versus a parent?
Oh, it is a much more wonderful experience.
Really?
Oh,
What's it
yes. They seem to love you unconditionally. They seem to be happy to see you and be around you because you're kind of a break from the norm, and they know that you're going to give them your undivided attention, which is absolutely true. And you're almost a playmate, but also can provide a little bit of instruction on things, and it's just the most wonderful relationship. And you're not, just dead tired trying to, do the laundry and do your work and raise the kids and get them fed. It's just a much more fun role in life.
Yeah, I would imagine. Let's talk about where you grew up. You grew up on a ranch. I imagine your parents were hardworking, and we kind of had a conversation this morning with Carly, who works on the show behind the scenes, how children kind of model themselves out after their parents' behavior. Your parents very hardworking?
Very hardworking, absolutely.
Would you say that's true? That you were hardworking because you grew up and you saw them working hard. You started working at a young age on the ranch. Can you tell us about that?
Very young. I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother, and this was a family ranch, so we all had to pitch in. But it was a sense of pride because you felt important, and you were important. So we put up hay. And the minute that you were tall enough to fully depress the clutch on a tractor, we were on a tractor. And so the first task in the hayfield was raking the hay. And that is done with a small tractor and what's called a side delivery rake, a John Deere 330 tractor, just a little one.
Showing off.
And then we moved to a mower, and then to the baler, and then to the stacker wagon. And then eventually, as time went on, these windrowers could replace the mower and the rake and build a windrow, and then you'd go in with these big balers, and they were easier to pick up and transport. So it became more mechanical and less labor-intensive over time. But, to master different skills and tractors and learn how to thread wire through a baler, and you had a real sense of pride. And the other great thing about working on a ranch, and I hear this even from my colleagues who still go home and work on the ranch once in a while, you can see what you've accomplished. At the end of the day here in the Senate, you don't have really much to show for it. You had this meeting, or you took this vote. But you can't go look at your accomplishments. On a ranch, you can. You can see how many bales you put up, or how much meadow you irrigated, or how many cattle you moved, or it's just a very fulfilling life.
Do you find that frustrating working up here, that there's no finality to something because it takes so long to make changes and accomplish something?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a soap opera. I'll see old friends that aren't here anymore. In fact, last night I was at a meeting and Saxy Chambliss walked in, who you all recall.
Old senator from Georgia. I don't mean old, but he was the former senator from Georgia.
Yeah, and he came in and started talking on issues, and they haven't changed.
Yeah.
So it can feel a little bit like a mouse on a treadmill. So when there is a day when something comes to fruition that you've been working on for a long time, it is such a happy day. Case in point, today, I had worked with Representative Newhouse on a letter to SEC Chairman Gensler concerning a new corporate entity that was being considered by the New York Stock Exchange for inclusion. And it is a scary darn thing that was being proposed. And so Dan and I worked on a letter, and today the rule was withdrawn.
Oh, wow.
And so that is a happy day. That's a day when you feel like something you've put time into and energy and worked on and studied and developed a position on and articulated your views does have the result you hoped.
And what was that turnaround time? I mean, I feel like usually those things happen not overnight, but it sounds like you all got this situation resolved pretty quickly.
Yes, this one resolved much more quickly than I'm used to.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very fun experience.
Wow. Now I want to go back to the ranch quickly. Is this something that you all did even through the winters? I mean, I have visited Wyoming one time. I didn't know much about Wyoming until I started
Sophie's
working.
from France.
Yes,
So
yes.
please forgive her.
Yeah,
I'll
so
give her
our
a
winters are less
excuse.
harsh. Well, we do have the Alps and the Pyrenees. But is this something that you all worked on through the winters? I mean, the winters are brutal in Wyoming.
They're tough, and yes, we worked in the winter. So while we put up hay in the summer, we feed it in the winter. So when I was young, we would we had this feed truck, a flatbed, and when we were really little, I mean really little, when we couldn't depress the clutch, we would stand in front of the steering wheel.
Yeah.
My dad would put the truck in compound gear, so it's just creeping along really slow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He'd pop out and and throw the bales off the flatbed and feed the cows. Well, this little kid, I'm talking 5, 6 years old, is behind the steering wheel keeping it going straight. And we
But
would
did you
do
love
that.
it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it
As
sounds
a
fun.
5-year-old driving a truck, it's gotta be
Exactly.
incredible.
Yes. Yes. And one day I can remember my brother drove by, and he was so little that his head was between the top of the steering wheel and the dashboard, so it looked like nobody was driving the truck.
That's hilarious.
And he goes driving by, and one of my dad's friends goes, "That was a driverless truck that went by." This is in the early 1960s.
They've really upgraded.
Yeah.
That's
Oh my
so
gosh,
funny.
that is too good. Go ahead.
Do you want to mention the cowboy thing?
Oh yeah, there's something else I didn't know about Wyoming. I'm embarrassed because I feel like
It's
these are
okay.
things
There's
that you
other
should
people
just
who
know.
think the same thing.
Well, two things. Wyoming is the cowboy state. I didn't know that's what Wyoming was called, and I also didn't realize that cowboys. It's a real profession. I mean, it's a real thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you tell us about what that looks like in Wyoming?
Yeah. Cowboys are generally working on ranches, much as I was when I was a kid. Sometimes they're putting up hay and feeding hay, but most of the time they're actually moving cattle where the water is. They're doctoring cattle out in pastures. So right now, for example, so I'm in the Senate, so I'm obviously not home watching cattle during the year, but I'm still ranching with my brother and my sister. So we usually buy about 1,000 yearling steers and then feed them through the winter and then into the summer. So we have had this fabulous woman. I mean, she is like the best cowboy, way better than I ever was. So she can go out in a pasture that's 1,000 acres with no fences, and she can see like a snotty-nosed steer that needs to be doctored. She can unload her horse out in this pasture, rope it, doctor it by herself, and then let it go and put that horse back in the trailer.
Okay, because I wondered how much of the show Yellowstone was kind of glorification, but what you're describing is kind of what
they
you see.
do.
Yeah.
Well, and there is some truth to, without, the sex and the F-bombs and the killings and all
and
that.
the train
Thank goodness.
station, right? Yeah.
But their sort of day-to-day life is really kind of like it is.
So cool.
It's
very
hard work. And they get to show off at rodeos every once in a while, don't they?
They do. A lot of the professional rodeo cowboys truly are not
Real cowboys.
ranch cowboys.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They're literally professional rodeo cowboys.
Okay.
In fact, I've been around rodeos and where the guys who are riding the rough stock, the bull riders, the saddle bronc riders, the bareback riders, really can't ride a saddle horse,
Oh, interesting.
but because they're not ranch raised people, and that is more common now than it used to be. It used to be that, the cowboys that rode in the rodeos were ranch cowboys.
Is it a dying art form? I mean, I know that this is something that people take a lot of pride in. Obviously, there's less ranches now maybe than there were in the past,
That's
especially
true.
when there was fur trading. So is it something that people are trying to kind of grow more just as less and less people do this?
There's a lot of pride in cowboying as an occupation. In fact, there are things called ranch rodeos that are very specific to ranch cowboys. So that's things like penning cattle, so you can demonstrate the horsemanship and the skill of your horse. There's the kind of roping that I described that our ranch manager deploys in the pasture. So it's more specific to the normal everyday ranch activities. And there are a lot of, ranch-raised ranch cowboys who go specifically to ranch rodeos as opposed to professional rodeos.
I see. I can't wait to visit one.
Well,
You got to come.
Yeah.
If we're talking rodeos, we should let our listeners know that the Frontier Days is out there in Wyoming, billed according to Wikipedia. And when are they ever wrong? But I think they got this one. World's largest outdoor rodeo and Western celebration, drawing nearly 200,000 people annually.
Yeah, and
Huge.
Cheyenne Frontier Days is the world's largest outdoor rodeo.
There you go.
We have a huge arena. We have the most contestants. It's outdoors. It's extremely impressive. It's the last full week in July, and it's impressive because in a rodeo that's indoors, in an arena, they have a very short distance from where, for example, the calf is let out of the chute until the roper pursues it on horse. But in our gigantic arena, the calf gets a 30-foot head start. And so they're going like a house of fire by the time the roper comes up on them and is able to throw a rope. So it takes a tremendous skill set
Yeah.
to perform in that large an arena. Same thing with the bulldoggers. That's where you've got a guy on a horse and a hazer on the other side. So you have two people running parallel with a steer between them. They're going 30 miles an hour.
Wow.
And one guy just leans off the side of his saddle, throws his arms around the horns of the steer, falls off onto the steer, and then wrestles the steer to the ground. And
Oh
these
my
These are
gosh.
gigantic steers. They, weigh 700-800 pounds. And it is so cowboy. In the Big Cheyenne Arena, they're going over 30 miles an hour when they finally come up on those stairs.
That's amazing. And 200,000 people to turn out is huge, especially since you have, the neighboring kind of competing rancher states like Montana.
Well, it's almost half your population.
And that's what I was
Yeah.
going to say. Yeah. And Wyoming is the lowest population than all other 50 states.
Yes.
It's amazing.
So I'm chairing the Senate Western Caucus, and we recently did some events in Las Vegas at the same time as the NFR, the National Finals Rodeo, which occurs every December in Las Vegas. And it brings together the top 15 rodeo performers in every event, and they perform all week to crown the national champions in every event for the year.
Wow.
And we did a panel on the economics of rodeo. And one of the things we learned is that take a Taylor Swift concert in Los Angeles, 2 nights.
Okay.
The economic impact to Las Vegas of the National Finals Rodeo is the same as 2 nights Taylor Swift, L.A.
That's a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot.
That's impressive.
It's a big
That gives
economic
Taylor
driver.
a run for her
Yeah.
money.
Thank you
Yeah.
for making that relatable So the audience
Yeah,
can
for
There you
understand.
people
go.
who don't know
That
much
is
about rodeo.
incredible.
Yeah.
Did you know that going in?
I did not.
Wow.
That's
But
amazing.
it's a good economic,
Yeah.
Yeah,
apples to
indicator.
apples comparison. Yeah, so rodeo is important for several reasons. Of course, the economic impacts, but also the cultural impacts. I mean, you look at Europe; those people crave the opportunity to see an American rodeo or a Mexican charro rodeo. And so this is part of the North American culture that's very unique. And for that matter, the South American culture. I've been to Argentina, and the cowboys down there are really impressive too. So
Yeah.
on this side of the world, it is just such an important part of our long-term history and culture.
Yeah.
And so to have an opportunity to keep it alive and be part of it is just really exciting.
So important.
Wow.
France has cowboys, but they're more like Spanish. They're nothing. But we do have a little cowboy region in the South.
Okay.
Near
Well,
the
let's
Pyrenees.
let's talk about the rodeo just a little bit more. I'm sure you aren't going to be completely surprised. We're going to bring out a picture, and this is not a
I love
screenshot
it.
of Little House on the Prairie. This is actually Senator Lummis. For those of you seeing our YouTube version, you'll see she is Miss Frontier. And what did you have to do to get that? Because it looked like nowadays you have to submit a written application, an accomplishment book, a horsemanship skills demonstration, an interview.
Yeah, it's much more structured now.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then, the Frontier Committee would just get together, the committee that puts on the event, and sort of pick a family that has contributed a lot to the community, to the event of rodeo, to Cheyenne Frontier Days as volunteers, because it's an all-volunteer organization. And they would just kind of pick a family to honor and pick a girl from the family to name as Miss Frontier. So that's how I became Miss Frontier.
What an honor.
Yeah.
How
It
old
was.
were you here?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I had just graduated from the University of Wyoming, so I was a graduated senior of the University of Wyoming. So I must have been almost 22, 21 years old at the time.
I love
Did
it.
you have duties that went along with that? Did you have to go on speaking tours or anything? Can you tell us
Yes.
about that?
Yeah. So we'd go on this booster trip on the train and on buses, mostly to the Denver area because that's a big area from which our audience draws. And we'd go with the Indians. And at the time, it was the Oglala Sioux Indians from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Now it's the Shoshone and Arapahoes from the Wind River Reservation in Cheyenne. But we'd travel with them, and they would do demonstrations of Indian dance, and then we'd talk about Cheyenne Frontier Days and the rodeo and the night shows in the Indian Village and the parades. We have the world's largest collection of outdoor carriages, horse-drawn, that are in 4 parades during the week.
they still are
yes,
used?
They're still
Wow.
used. Yep. And the Indians would dance, which was a lot of fun because
Yeah.
I got to become friends with a lot of the little Indian kids and some of their parents too. At the time, the gentleman who was the principal at the school on Pine Ridge would sort of lead the group to Cheyenne. Calvin Jumping Bull. Calvin Jumping Bull was the grandson or great grandson of Sitting Bull.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So and they just were wonderful to travel with, and their performances were fabulous. So there's this grand hotel in downtown Denver called the Brown Palace, and it has a like 8 or 10 floors lobby, and they'd get their Indian drums out, huge drums, way bigger than this table, and perform and dance, and those drums in that lobby would give you chills. It was so
Wow.
beautiful, and I think back to those performances and being part of that, and it was just magic.
That
It was
sounds
really cool.
amazing.
Yeah,
That sounds cool.
So do they still do those today?
they do.
Okay. I'm creating my bucket list as we go through this
She has
episode.
so much on her list.
I really do. I do. Yeah, especially after the elephant in the room.
Now, you are not behind the times. I mean, you're from one of the smallest states. You operate a cattle ranch. One of the big things you're known for is Bitcoin, and you've said you want to educate people about Bitcoin. Maybe briefly, could you talk about how you got into Bitcoin?
And crypto in general.
Well, it does seem odd that somebody
It
who's
does.
a rancher from Wyoming, when this is sort of a digitally based form of money,
Yeah.
it seems like a disconnect. But my daughter and my son-in-law taught me about Bitcoin. We were sitting around the kitchen table after Christmas one year talking about it, and they helped me buy a Bitcoin, which piqued my interest, so I started learning a little more about it. And then I was in the U.S. House for 8 years. I left in January of 2017, went back to Wyoming. I was invited to something called the Satoshi Roundtable to speak about how Congress works. And so I went, and it was a very significant year for developing and hardening the durability of Bitcoin. And so I sat in this room on a beach in Mexico, never went outside. Here I'm finally free from Congress after, 8 cold winters in Washington. I get on a beach in Mexico, never go to the beach. I sat in a windowless room and listened to these geeks talk about Bitcoin and argue about Bitcoin for 2 days. And it just was so fascinating. And so I continued to learn and buy Bitcoin. And then when I arrived here in the U.S. Senate, I realized nobody knew about Bitcoin.
And that was just 3 years later. You got to the Senate in 2020.
Correct.
Well, I
Yes.
remember their first hearing, and it was like, "Oh, what does this wheel thing do? It turns around." I mean,
Right.
very unfamiliar with it.
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're absolutely right. And so I realized that maybe I was ahead of things in my understanding of its possible utility and how it needs to be regulated in order to thrive and become what I believe will be an extremely important role in our economy. And so I undertook to help create a financial innovation caucus so we can begin to educate people. So they meet, I don't know, once a month or twice a month. And it's mostly staffers that come and are briefed and can ask questions, take a deep dive to better understand digital assets. And I've continued to learn myself. And now I'm working with Senator Gillibrand on the comprehensive piece of legislation to integrate digital assets into the U.S. economy.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Now that is huge,
Yeah.
actually. Isn't regulation kind of contradictory to its
The
reason
point,
for
yeah.
being?
Yeah,
it
is.
What do you think? How do you reconcile that? I mean, it wouldn't happen, though, unless you helped it along.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, because Bitcoin is decentralized. Its users tend to be suspicious of government because government is a centralized power. And Bitcoin was created specifically to combat centralized power. It is a completely decentralized asset. And so you're right. There's a complete disconnect. Yeah. But then you look at something like FTX, where people were duped into buying into a fraudulent company and lost a lot of money. An offshore company, by the way, that we didn't regulate. So if we're going to expose people in the United States to a very durable asset that is going to grow in value and be very important in our economy, we have to have a regulatory framework that protects consumers. And so for people who want to buy Bitcoin, have it in their individual wallets, completely disassociated from the U.S. dollar. They can still do that. But for someone who wants to interact between the U.S. dollar and Bitcoin and trade and custody and invest, we need to have a regulatory framework.
Last question on that. Let's just dumb this down because everybody's probably heard of Bitcoin. Most people might not know how to buy it, probably don't know how to sell it, and they don't know the latest news. And if anybody's tapped in, it's you. Yeah, so if you'd like to educate people about Bitcoin, can you give our listeners, like my mom, who knows nothing about it, 2 things you'd like them to know about Bitcoin?
Okay.
That's a great question, Cyrus.
Wow.
I came up with it myself.
Well, Cyrus, Bitcoin is digital gold. It has many of the qualities of gold in terms of it is money. It is very durable. It is fungible, meaning it can be easily exchanged for other things of value. It is finite. It is scarce.
There's only so much.
Yep.
Okay.
21 million Bitcoin will be mined, and that's it. It is easy to transfer on your phone, and now that almost everybody has a cell phone, you can transfer money without a trusted third party. It doesn't have to go through a bank. I can send it to you, Cyrus, on the on my cell phone. You can receive it.
You can show me.
And we don't have to go through a bank. We don't have to trust anybody. It is a simple transaction, so it makes it cheap and quick for you and I to transfer value between each other. It is both a store of value and a means of exchange. So you can buy it and hold it, which is what I do, or you can use it as actual money. You can go to Starbucks. You can take your computer and send them Bitcoin, and it doesn't go through a bank, so it saves money. No transaction
And
fees.
I think I've seen stores. I don't know how many. Maybe I've seen this, in other places that are starting to accept like a fraction of a Bitcoin in terms of pricing goods and products. And I know that there are some people abroad, at least, who have purchased homes or condos using Bitcoin.
Yes,
which is pretty crazy.
It's infinitely divisible. A fraction of a Bitcoin is called a Satoshi or a sat.
Interesting.
And there are 100 million sats per Bitcoin.
Wow.
So it's even more divisible than the U.S. dollar.
You don't think it's going anywhere? I mean, I think a lot of people now thought, okay, it hit its peak and now it's down and it's just not going to be around anymore.
It's embedded in the U.S. economy. It's embedded in the global economy. It's going to stay around because people in unstable governments or governments that experience hyperinflation are going to use it. It is easy to transport. It gives people more independence. There is literally a Russian who was going to be conscripted to go to war against Ukraine. He didn't believe in the war, so he put his Bitcoin on a zip drive, went on vacation from Russia, never went back, and his entire life savings was on that zip drive, and he was able to take it with him. That's the power of Bitcoin.
Well, that is some soundbite right there. I'm sure we're going to hear that
that's
in some
amazing.
form or another. We are about out of time. Sophie, any question before I get to my last one?
No, go ahead.
Okay, your office.
I mean, I have a few, but
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
All right. Well, your
No, you
office
go.
says that you are very fun. They appreciate that. It's a priority for you. Is that true?
You know, it is. We have a great team. My staff is wonderful. We make sure that we work hard, that we spend a lot of time together, and that we choose to have fun together because life's too short. It's just too short not to have fun. So every Wednesday, we get together between 5 and 6 p.m. at work, and we have some fun question, and everybody goes around the room and answers the question. We invent our own questions and sit and laugh with each other. We have competitions. We have, during college football season, we have tailgate parties, and whoever puts on the best tailgate party wins. And we have other senators come and judge it.
That's so fun.
We have Christmas decorating contests by the different rooms in our office with different themes. And the winners the money goes to charity for the winning rooms. And people go all out, and we invite other senators to come in and be the judges. We have dip contests. We have chili contests. We have.
That is so
goodness.
fun.
It's a good working atmosphere.
Could you let us know when the next dip contest is?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, final question. If you were a type of sandwich, what kind would you be and why?
Oh, I think I would be a New York pastrami type sandwich, because it's not much bread and a mountain of
Such a great
pastrami, and I don't want the bread, I want the meat. So I would think I would be a deli pastrami.
I love it.
Knocked it out of the park. Senator, thank you so much for all the time you've given us today, and thank you for being today's The Elephant in the Room.
Thank you both. This has been fun.
Hey, how about that meat answer? What sandwich would you be, Sophie?
That was good. I can't believe you did that and you didn't warn me.
Well, it was just a fun question. What would you have said had I warned you?
Honestly, mine is so weird.
What is it? Is it snails?
No, but in France,
Yes.
my dad would make me mayo tomato sandwiches.
That sounds delicious, actually.
So good.
It's one of my favorite. What kind of bread?
Just like maybe just a nice sourdough. Not too crunchy though.
That sounds good.
Honestly, any bread. It doesn't matter. You could do baguette. The important part is like the wetness of the mayo and the tomato.
Okay.
So weird. I'm aware that is like would severely gross people out.
If you've got a good tomato, bring it by for Sophie. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you under the direction of U.S. Senator John Barrasso, also of Wyoming. Arjun Modi is our executive producer. Carly Rapp is our show producer. And Rashad Smith is our technical director. Thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been The Elephant in the Room.